Hello, and I'm Swooping Hawk. Today we'll be talking about harmonic pattern structures. We will cover the ABCD structure, M and W patterns, which is a grouping of different harmonic patterns, the shark, 5-0, and 3 drives pattern. We'll be looking at identification of these patterns and also what makes them valid. So each has a different set of ratios, and that is what makes them valid, because you can find patterns on the chart. However, you need to know whether they're valid to trade or not. So we'll be looking at what makes a valid pattern in this series as well. First up, we'll look at the ABCD. Technically, it is called AB equals CD pattern because the AB leg equals the CD leg. And it is a corrective price structure where the movement comes in one direction, followed by a partial retracement of that move, and then a continuation in the same direction as the initial movement. I am showing a bullish ABCD structure on my screen, and as you can see, the A to B leg is followed by the C leg, and this should be between a 382 to an 886 retrace. After that, you're projecting the B to C leg down, so that should be a 1.13 to a 2.618. We are looking at, I guess the recommended ratios for the ABCD to know common projections from that C point that you would expect that are complementary with each other. You would be looking at the table on the right. So the table on the right looks at a C point of a 382. In that case, you would be looking for a BC projection of a 2.24 or a 2.618. And if the C point retracement was a 0.5, you would be looking for a projection of a 2.0. So these are complementary ratios that are commonly found and form the best ABCD patterns. In addition to the regular ABCD, which we just saw, we have alternate ABCD projections. So the reason why you would have this is because sometimes the projections and the ratios discussed on the previous page get blown out. So price continues down past whatever that projection was. And then you're left thinking, well, what's happened to my ABCD? So in this case, we do have some alternate projections, and to create the alternate projection, what you would do is multiply the AB leg by either 1.27 or 1.618. You would then project that distance down. So here is your AB leg followed by your C retracement. So you're multiplying this AB leg by a 1.27 or a 1.618, and then you project it down from this C point. So this gives you an example of what to expect. Your regular ABCD would complete here, your 1.27 ABCD there, and your 1.618 would be the longest extension that you could have for the alternate ABCD. Here is an ABCD example. We can see on screen we have a wave down, followed by a partial retracement. So that retracement is a 786. And because it's a 786, we then can project this BC leg down to a 1.27, which is what it ended up being. And that completed the ABCD structure. Upon completion, the price started to stabilize and move upwards, which is exactly what we would look for in an ideal scenario. In addition to the other ABCDs that we just discussed, we have the reciprocal ABCD. So this one looks quite different. It looks or appears rectangular, and by rectangular I'm referring to like the shape of the whole thing. It looks like a rectangle box. However, within here you can see you have the AB leg and then you retrace down to C, followed by an upwards movement to D. So that part of it appears to be like a lazy S or a lazy Z, and so it has that more boxy kind of shape to it rather than the diamond shape that the other ABCD has. The reciprocal ABCD is fundamental in the 5-0 pattern, which we'll discuss at a later point in this slide deck. Like the other ABCDs, we do have combinations of ratios, and I have them on the right. So the extensions for the ratio alignments are a little bit different, and as you can see, they go right up to the 3.618, so that's bigger than the other ABCDs. The regular ABCD went to a 2.618. However, many of the ratios are the same. So, for example, the 0.5 goes to the 2.0, so that is much the same. And so that's the reciprocal ABCD. Here is an example of a reciprocal ABCD where we have a move up, then we have a retracement, and that's a 707 retracement. So because it's a 707 retracement, we know it goes to the 1.4, and so it goes up and goes to the 1.41. So this is a bearish reciprocal ABCD, so we would actually expect price movement to come down after this structure has completed. Next, we will be talking about M and W patterns, because these refer to harmonic patterns that have a common feature where they look like an M shape if they're bullish or a W shape if they're bearish. These patterns do have individual names and different ratios associated with them, but they do have a couple of common traits. One is this shape like an M or a W, and the other is that they have a regular ABCD or an alternate ABCD built into the pattern. So that goes from the A to the D leg, and I'll point that out as we go and have a look at the patterns. So here is an example of a W pattern. This is a bearish butterfly. As you can see, you have a leg down, followed by a retracement. You come back down. The C is higher than the A leg, which is, what we look for to maintain that W shape that we're seeking. So in bearish shapes, your C point will always be above A, and it will always be below A for bullish patterns. And then you come up into the D leg, and the B point and this D point have specific ratios and alignments that need to take place in order to make the pattern valid. And so that's what we're going to talk about now. First up, we'll talk about the bat pattern. So the bat pattern obviously has this X to A leg up, so that can be any distance, but then based on that X to A, we then retrace. So the bullish bat can retrace between a 382 and a 0.5, and before then price coming back up to form the C point. So this C point is, as mentioned on the previous slide, is going to be lower than the A point because it is a bullish pattern. And we are expecting a retrace of between a 382 to an 886. And that just maintains that M structure where the C point is lower than that A point, which is what we're looking for. And that also maintains the ABCD structure because you have an ABCD structure in the pattern as well. And that is why the BC extension here is projected down and must be between a 1.618 to a 2.618. The X to A projection is at an 886. If we have a look at the bearish bat, again you have an X to A leg before a retracement upwards. So that is between a 382 and a 0.5. I find with bats, Most of them are between 0.4 and 0.5. I really like around the 0.5 area for the BAT. It works out well a lot of the time. Anyway, then after the B point, you come back down into C because it is a bearish pattern. The C must be above the A, and how we maintain this is we look for a retracement between 382 and the 886 before we go back up and go to the D point. The B to C retracement again is the 1.618, and we have our ABCD structure here. And yeah, the X to A retracement is the 886. So each pattern has a pattern tolerance, and for the BAT, it is a plus or minus 5% tolerance. This is the alternate BAT. So it's much the same as the regular BAT, except there are a couple of differences. Obviously, it is a derivation of the regular BAT. So after the X to A leg, we come into the B leg retracement. So this B leg retracement is shallow, and it is a 382 retracement. After that, again, you come into that C point, and it's the same ratio for all these M and W patterns, where you find the C point is between a 382 and an 886, just to maintain that M and W shape and the ABCD structure, and then we come down into the D point. The BC projection is different, obviously, due to the 382 retrace, so you're looking for a 2.0 and between a 2.0 and a 3.618. It is also different because you are looking for a 1.13. So this is technically an extension pattern because the D point comes below the X point, because the X to A projection into that D point is a 1.13. So that's the two key differences between the alternate BAT and the regular BAT, is that the alternate BAT has a shallow retrace at the B point of a 382, and then an extension of a 1.13 of the XA leg into that D point. We are looking for a tighter alignment on the alternate BAT, so the pattern tolerance is a plus or minus 3%. Next up, we have the Gartley. So the Gartley was actually outlined in a book called Profits in the Stock Market, which was published in 1935. And this was published by a guy called H.M. Gartley. The book did not discuss specific Fibonacci retracements for the Gartley and only talked about the pattern. So Scott Carney assigned ratios to the pattern, which have since become industry standard. In volume 3 of Scott Carney's book, he also defined the 886 deep Gartley. So that is the same as the regular Gartley, except it comes down to an 886 instead of a 786 at that D point. The key levels of the Gartley is obviously from that X to A leg, you're looking at a 618 retracement. So it's important that the 618 is maintained and is as close as possible, because that's what gives the Gartley its unique structure. You then come into the C point, which again has that same ratio for all the M and W patterns of between a 382 to an 886. You project that BC down into the D point, and that is between a 1.13 to a 1.618. You are also looking for the XA leg retracement into that D point of a 786. Gartleys require tight alignment, and that's why the pattern tolerance is a plus or minus 3%. But really, the tighter the alignment for a Gartley, the better it is. Also, upon completion of a Gartley, I always look for a reaction, and the reason for that is the 786 is a lesser retracement than all the other patterns. All the other patterns at least go to the 886. So if price doesn't stop at that 786, it is likely going. It is possible for price to stop at the 886 and form a deep Gartley. However, it is highly possible that it does go lower than that. So next up, we are looking at the crab pattern. So the crab pattern is an extension pattern, and it can be very reactive in nature. The reason for that is the extended projection into the D leg. So you're looking at a 1.618 projection down into that. The crab, from that X to A leg, you're looking at a retracement of between a 382 to a 618 before retracing up to a C point. Again, the same alignment as with all the other M&W patterns. You're looking at a 382 to an 886. And then coming into that D point, you're looking at a BC projection of a 2.618 to 3.618. You're also looking at that X to A leg being a 1.618. So the most common thing that we need to kind of look at is, as I mentioned, the failed Gartleys can extend far below the 786, in which case they can turn into crabs, because you can see that the B point, it can be a 618, and actually a 618 crabs are usually really nice, and then they're coming into a 1.618, which is obviously a fair bit lower than the 786. So that's what we're looking for, and that's what makes the crab unique, is that it has this 1.618 projection into that D point of the XA leg. The pattern tolerance is a plus or minus 5% for the crab, and usually because of the 1.618 extension, you are looking at usually a reaction from a crab, because they can be very reactive in nature. There is a variation of the crab. So variation of the crab is a deep crab, where the key difference is this B point retracement. You are looking at an 886 retracement, whereas the regular crab could only retrace to a maximum of 618. So at that 886 retracement, again, you come up for your C point and then down to D, and yeah, you're still looking for that 1.618 XA projection into that D point, because, as I mentioned, that's what makes the crab unique. The structure tolerance is plus or minus 5% of these ratios. Why these ratios matter is simply because you have this A, B, C, D structure in here, and so that needs to be maintained with proper ratio alignment. And so if you can get one as close to the ratios as possible, that's good. In practice, if I'm drawing them manually, I do find it's very hard to get them perfect. So you will have to use the plus or minus 5% tolerance on that. And that's fine. Just for some of these patterns, I guess the Gartley is the key one where tight ratios matter. Others have a bit of leeway around them, and really for the crab, you're looking at the 1.618 as being sort of a key measurement there. Next up, we're talking about the butterfly pattern. So the butterfly pattern was discovered by Bryce Gilmore. However, the exact alignment was not mentioned in his book, and Scott Carney's book, The Harmonic Trader, which was published in 1998, became industry standard, and the structure now has the ratios that Scott assigned to it. So for the bullish butterfly, again, we're looking at the X to A leg and then a retracement to the 786 for the B point. We go up to the C point. Again, it's the same as all the other M&W patterns of a 382 to an 886, where that C point is below the A point, and projecting that BC leg down, which should be a 1.618 to 2.24. We are looking for a 1.27 of the XA projection into that D point. And likewise with the bearish butterfly, you've got the X to A leg, you come up to the 786 for the B point, then go back down to the C point, which is between a 382 and an 886 retracement. So your C should be higher than your A point. You then project that BC leg into that D point, and it's a 1.618 to 2.24 there. And yeah, then your X to A projection is a 1.27. Because the D point is, greater than the X point of a 1.27 projection, it is considered an extension pattern. So that's the key trade of the butterfly is at 786 B point and the 1.27 XA projection into D. For the butterfly, again, we're looking at a tight alignment, and so we're preferably looking for the ratios to be close to being exact, and we have a tolerance of plus or minus 3% on the butterfly pattern. Again, like the Gartley, because we would like a pattern that's tight, we're also looking for reaction off the levels as well. Next up, we'll look at the 0 XABC patterns. These include the shark and the 5-0. First up, we'll talk about the shark pattern. So the shark and the 5-0 pattern are not considered in the same category as M and W structures because they don't have that same structure. It is different, and they have been named differently in terms of their points. So this 0 or O is the first point coming up into the X. So that's your first leg up, of which your Fibonacci's are then based off. So you come down into your A. Now there's no formal ratio alignment for the A point there. It can be anything. However, there are only certain combinations of A points that work in order to meet your C point objectives. So we'll talk about that in a moment. So yeah, so from your X you come into your A and then go up to your B point. So the key aspect here is this B point is higher than the X point. So we are looking at a projection of a 1.13 to a 1.618 for a shark. And the notion being that this B point is on its way to break out but fails to do so. And therefore a common trait of the shark and the formation of the pattern is that you may get a heavy retracement from the B to C leg. And that's just due to the nature of a failed breakout. You are looking for the A to B extension to be projected down and have a 1.618 to 2.24. So 1.618 is minimum of what you want to look for on this leg. The 0 to X leg has to be an 886 to a 1.13. And again, it is important to have at least an 886 here. Now, in the situation where your 886 does not meet this 1.618 minimum retracement, you would pull that C point down further if you're manually drawing it, and probably look at the 1.13 extension for the shark. But yeah, it's important that the minimum 886 criteria is met, as well as this minimum 1.618 here. And the B point is higher than the X point as well. So yeah, so the shark, as mentioned, goes up to the 0.5, which is the 50% retracement. It then has or could potentially turn into a 5-0. So a bullish shark would be a bearish 5-0, where price would come down from that 0.5. and price will come down lower than this PRZ. You are looking at that as a possibility, or sometimes with sharks, if they extend past the 0.5, they can actually go to the 618, and then you would expect it to come down and then back into the PRZ for the type 2. And with the bearish shark, you have the 0 to X, and then up to A, down to B. So the B point is lower than the X point, as you can see, because of this 1.13 to 1.618 retracement. And then you come up to the C point, which is either an 886 or a 1.13 generally. So therefore, because it's a bearish shark, price will come down here and look for that 0.5 Fibonacci, and then it has an option of turning into a 5.0 at that point, and the 5.0 would be a bullish 5.0. So we'll go and look at the 5.0 structure now. So this is the 5.0 pattern, and the 5.0 pattern is unique as it has a range of different ratios associated with it, and as you can see here with that rectangle shape, that is your reciprocal A B C D as part of the 5.0 pattern. So as I mentioned, sharks can precede the 5.0 pattern, but they don't have to. And that's because some of these alignments don't have to be exactly the same as the shark. So you come down, obviously from this 0 to X leg, up into the A point where there's no real ratio of what that A needs to be. You do have the 1.13 to 1.618 extension, so you're looking for a B point that is greater than the X point, and that is the same as the shark. But then you can make a reciprocal A, B, C, D, and that can be, obviously, you're looking for 1.618 to 2.24 from this A to C point, and a 0.5 of this B to D. And that just is a different alignment in that ABCD section of the pattern there. And then obviously from the bullish 5.0, you're looking for price to come up after the pattern completion. The bearish 5.0, you're looking for price to come down at that pattern completion. So there are a lot of points to the 5.0 pattern, so they're harder to recognize, particularly if you're drawing manually. I find that really I just use 5.0s based on sharks because of that reason. If you have software that picks up 5.0 patterns, then that's fine. And sometimes you can get a 5.0 that's not a shark. But generally, I will look for 5.0s manually and just take it off the sharks. And next up, we have the 3 drives pattern. So the 3 drives pattern was originally outlined in Robert Precht's book, The Elliott Wave Principle. This pattern was adapted from his book by Scott Carney, and the idea of this 3 drives pattern is you're coming down, then you retrace up, come down, retrace up, come down, retrace up, and so you have these 3 points of these 3 drives down for a bullish pattern, and obviously you have 3 drives up, so you have these 3 points continuing upwards for the bearish 3 drives, which comes down. So you're looking for symmetrical price movements, and you're also looking for pattern ratios between a 1.27 to a 1.618 for both of them. So ideally, like with all harmonic patterns, being symmetrical is better. So you have the different parts of the pattern coming in at the same time points to create this symmetrical nature. I would say the symmetrical nature of patterns is particularly important for the Gartley, and you're looking for this into the 3 drives as well. I'm looking for time, to just be symmetrical in the 3 drives. It is extremely hard to find patterns with exactly the same 3 drives in terms of the ratios, but sometimes you can find them, with similar alignments. And you will notice that if you have a look at this, it kind of looks like an ABCD and then another ABCD. So that's how I try and identify these ones, is because it's kind of like a double ABCD in the 3 drives. So here is an example of a 3 drives where price comes up into that first drive, retraces, comes up into the second drive, retraces, comes up into that third drive, and then retraces down. Here we do actually have a 3 drives pattern that is symmetrical in time. So that time factor is, perfect. The, levels of these is the 1.74 to the 1.56. So they're not exactly the same, but they are certainly within the ratio alignments as discussed on the previous slide. So it's these types of things that I'm looking for, because it's very hard, obviously, to get the retracements exactly perfect for every single drive. So this is pretty close to what you can expect for 3 drives, and certainly I would trade this as a 3 drives pattern. So this is an overview of all the harmonic patterns, and I trade Scott Carney's methodology, and therefore some of you may be asking, well, what about the cipher? So I don't trade ciphers because they are not considered harmonic. The ratios do not align with the level of harmonicity that the other patterns do. So therefore, that's why the cipher was not covered in this video. However, I know many people do trade the cipher, so it's something that you can choose to look into. It is very similar to the shark, so if you understand the shark, you'll likely understand the cipher. It's just got slightly different retracements for the different legs, that's all. And I otherwise just wanted to thank you for listening to this video, and I will see you in the next one.